Stage and screen legend STACY KEACH is here to talk about his life, his 5-decade career, his faith, and why Shakespeare continues to be his muse. Pope Francis is headed to the Holy Land to promote Christian unity. What will his message be, and what landmines await him? Author and Holy Land expert Stephen Ray is here to give us a preview. And later, he's one of the youngest cardinals in the Church today, and though he's the leader of tens of millions of Catholics in the Philippines, his influence is growing. One of the co-presidents of the upcoming Synod for the Family, Cardinal Luis Tagle, in an exclusive interview. The World Over Live begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. STACY KEACH, Stephen Ray, and Cardinal Luis Tagle are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet at Raymond Arroyo. I'll be live tweeting throughout the show, or drop us an email at worldover@EWTN.com. Let's get started. Here's the brief news from the world over this week. 2 car bombs exploded at a bus terminal and market in Nigeria's central city of Jos on Tuesday. At least 118 people were killed, dozens more were wounded. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but the bombings bore the hallmarks of Boko Haram. Meanwhile, there's still no sign of the 276 schoolgirls kidnapped by the jihadist group more than a month ago. The Nigerian government continues to be criticized for their inability to locate the girls and to protect its citizens. Ghanan Cardinal Peter Turkson, president of the Vatican Council on Justice and Peace, says Nigeria must figure a way to deal with Boko Haram.
The situation is very distressing. I mean, the sad thing for me is that it appears as if Nigerians or people in that part of Nigeria cannot count on the government for security, for protection. As for people coming out and expressing their outcry and dismay and, whatever, but everybody knows that Boko Haram is not the type to just, be influenced readily by public outcry,
The al-Qaeda-linked group is attempting to create an Islamic state in the religiously diverse country. And a new Christian exodus is underway in Aleppo, Syria. Armenian Catholic Archbishop Boutros Marayati told Fides News that the Syrian rebels are besieging Aleppo, driving Christians to Lebanon and to the Mediterranean coast. Al-Qaeda-linked rebels recently shut down the city's water supply. According to the Red Cross, the lack of potable water has exasperated the humanitarian crisis already present there. Archbishop Marayati said that the worsening conditions, due to those conditions, families took their luggage, closed their homes, and fled. Maybe they'll come back in 4 months, he said. Perhaps they'll never come back again. And the Church's leading prelate in Libya is warning that the situation there is more critical than at any point since the overthrow of dictator Muammar Gaddafi. After a week of militia violence that left 70 dead, Bishop Giovanni Martinelli of Tripoli said that there are now presumptions of a civil war. On Monday, Libya's army chief ordered the deployment of powerful Muslim-led militias a day after parliament was sieged by rebel troops. An anti-Islamist renegade general, Khalifa Hifter, sent his troops in to seize the legislative body. The general claims that Parliament has been supporting terrorism and that he intended to rescue the nation. In the wake of the fighting, Libya's government has called for new elections in June, with the hope that that might diffuse tensions and stave off a potential civil war. We'll keep you posted. New serious concerns over the health of Pope Francis ahead of the visit to the Holy Land. Some in the Holy See are beginning to openly discuss the Pope's health and how he'll handle the rigorous 3-day, 15-event schedule in Jordan, Israel, and the Palestinian territory. Vatican journalist Edward Pentin is reporting in Newsmax that the 77-year-old pontiff who has only one fully functioning lung, has canceled recent events owing to an assortment of ailments, colds and fevers, and reports of fatigue. According to a doctor interviewed by Newsmax, the Pope's diminished lung function is very serious. Dr. Peter Hibbard suggested that the Pope's, quote, repeated fatigue reports and weight gain suggests that he may be slipping into a form of chronic heart failure, common among victims of significant lung disorders, end quote. Vatican spokesman Father Federico Lombardi is meanwhile downplaying the Pope's cancellation of a visit to a Marian shrine this week outside of Rome. He said the Pope simply needed some rest before the Holy Land trip, and that shouldn't be considered a cause for concern about his health. Be sure to tune in to EWTN for complete coverage beginning Friday, May the 23rd. You don't want to miss it. Go to EWTN.com for details and times. And as voters across Europe head to the polls for European Parliament elections, the prefect of the pontifical household, Archbishop Georg Gonswain, this week decried what he called widespread militant secularism in the European Union. Speaking at a church event in Switzerland on Sunday, Archbishop Gonswain criticized the lack of political will to oppose discrimination against Christians. He noted the political and media double standard, where anti-Semitism and Islamophobia is condemned, but Christian discrimination is ignored. Certain circles in Europe, he said, want to muzzle Christians and push religion to the margins. Echoing Pope Benedict, he said this path would be suicide for the EU, as Europe cannot survive if it renounces its Christian roots. And an historic first in North Korea, as Cardinal Andrew Yeum Soo-jung became the first church leader from South Korea to visit the reclusive communist North. According to church sources, the visit was merely pastoral, and Cardinal Yeum did not meet with government officials. Instead, he and other South Korean priests traveled just over the militarized border to a joint North-South industrial park. Speaking on the strained relations between North and South Korea, the Cardinal said that the North-South cooperation he saw at the industrial park gives him hope for Korea overcoming the pain and sadness of the past. Alas, the following day, North and South Korea exchanged threatening artillery fire near their disputed maritime border. And finally, the cause of canonization for Opus Dei's first priest in the U.S. is headed to Rome. On Thursday, Archbishop of Boston, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, officially closed the diocesan phase of the cause of canonization for Father Joseph Muskis. After being ordained as one of Opus Dei's first 3 priests in 1940, their founder, Saint Jose Maria Escriva, asked Father Joseph to begin the group's apostolic work in the United States. After laying the groundwork for Opus Dei's beginnings in Asia, he returned in 1976 to lead the organization in the U.S. until his death in 1983. Cardinal O'Malley praised Father Muskis for showing that the virtue of everyday heroism can be achieved by all who open their heart and soul to the gift of God's graces. When we return, he's conquered television, film, and the stage, and he's still on the boards as we speak. Actor STACY KEACH joins us to discuss his new memoir and what he learned playing characters Shakespearean and biblical when The World Over Live continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My next guest is a stage and screen acting legend. He's been hailed as one of America's great classical actors, and it's no wonder. He's distinguished himself in roles as diverse as Barabbas in Franco Zeffirelli's Jesus of Nazareth, to Bad Bob in the life and times of Judge Roy Bean, to television's Mike Hammer. He's won a Golden Globe, he's been nominated for an Emmy and a Tony, and he's not finished yet. In his new memoir, All in All, An Actor's Life on and Off the Stage, he reveals the triumphs and rough patches of a remarkable career. He's currently appearing here in Washington as Falstaff in the Shakespeare Theatre Company's productions of Henry IV, Parts 1 and 2. I sat down with him a little earlier in studio to talk about his journey so far and the faith that keeps him in the game. Here's my exclusive interview with STACY KEACH. STACY KEACH has been an incredible career. 5 decades it has spanned. When you look back, did you ever imagine you would be here, by the way, headlining in a major Shakespeare production, not one but 2 shows in repertory?
Right. Makes me feel very old.
Oh,
No. No, it's great to be back in Washington. I'm very excited to be back here doing the show and to be on your show. I mean, it's great.
This is a delight for me. And the new book, All in All, which is your biography, is simply incredible.
Well,
I want to talk about your parents.
Okay, great.
Talk so lovingly about in the top of this book. I didn't realize your father was the creator of so many radio programs that became legendary. The Texas Rangers.
The Tales of the Texas Rangers.
Tales of the Texas Rangers, and he was an actor, a writer. Tell me about him and how he shaped your career.
And that was also the way I got my start, because he was doing the show at NBC. It was on the air at NBC, and down at Sunset and Vine, I was 12 years old. I'd go down to the studio and watch these wonderful actors perform in front of a microphone the Tales of the Texas Rangers. Joel McRae was the star of that show, and it was such an appeal to the imagination. I mean, I could see all these, and they had all the Foley stuff right there. The guy with the horses.
They did all the effects live.
All right there live and right in front. So I had the whole experience. That's really what turned me on to acting.
Well, and your great love, which we'll talk about later. You are known and so distinguished in the industry now as a narrator, as an audio talent, reading audio books, narrating so many television shows, which we'll get to. Is that where the first kernel of that sort of implanted in you?
Absolutely. That's where it started. That's where it started. And my dad, you know, both my mom and dad, they went to Northwestern, and they were both in the theater department. And my mom was an actress in those days. She didn't, once she got out of college, she didn't do it anymore, but she was always very supportive of my dad, who was trying to get, you know, he was given a job as an actor-director at the Pasadena Playhouse in the early 40s, just after I was born, in Savannah, Georgia.
Wow.
Because he was teaching there, and then got called away by Gilmore Brown, I believe his name. To come out to the Pasadena Playhouse. And he worked with people like Victor Jory and Raymond Burr, and they were all contemporaries.
And you sort of had a front row seat on all of this as a kid.
Yeah, in those days, no, I was. That
was before you came along.
I was still crying, and they were trying to keep me, you know, quiet, because the apartment they were living in, they weren't supposed to have any children.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
So anyway.
Unbelievable background. It's a beautiful, and you can tell the affection and love you have for them, and they really span the whole of the story here.
So very influential, wonderful people.
I didn't realize that you were born with a cleft lip and palate.
Right. Well, it's a partial palate.
But you went through several surgeries.
Four surgeries. 4 surgeries.
Unbelievable. But to take this public career where you're being seen all the time, did it inhibit you at all? Did you have any sense of reluctance starting?
Not really. It was I had quite the opposite effect, and I think again that comes back to my parents, because they were so positive and supportive, saying, "Well, you're different. You know, you're unique.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it." So, I think I became you know, an overachiever as a result of it. In other words, I didn't want to be put in a cubbyhole where and I had a little bit of a nasal thing that I had to fix.
Overcome.
I had to overcome that with speech therapy when I was younger, which is one of the things. I've been on the Cleft Palate Foundation as the honorary chairman for a number of years, and very honored to do that. But one of the things we are very actively involved with is trying to get insurance for indigent parents who can't afford not only the surgeries, but also
all the follow-up, therapy and recuperation. Yeah, it's important.
And the speech therapy, because that's a very important part of it. And for me, without that, I wouldn't be able to be here doing what I'm doing right now.
It's incredible. No, when I read it, I just had no idea at all.
Yeah.
But it does show, and you are a living lesson in tenacity, and when you want to do something, nature be damned, you can do it if you really put your mind to it and focus.
I think that's true. You know, I think that's certainly true of just about anything, particularly athletics and perhaps learning how to play a musical instrument.
You go on to college, and you see Olivier's great film of Richard III.
Right.
And you think what?
I was blown away. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I thought, wow, this is great. Because when I was in high school, I remember Mrs. McMillan was my drama teacher, and we had a test at who is the most famous Shakespearean actor in the world. Well, my answer was Marlon Brando, because I just saw
Julius Caesar.
That's right. And to Laurence Olivier, and I said, who? I didn't know who he was until I saw not only Richard III, but also Henry V and Hamlet. And I saw there was an Olivier Festival when I was at Berkeley, and I was mesmerized. I sat there until the theater, until it closed.
And that's when you were first bitten by the bug, you think, that you were going to be a classical actor?
I thought, yes, I think so, because it was about that same time that he did The Entertainer, and I got a feeling, I said, here's a man who can do both contemporary work and also classical work. And that, and they train you how to do that in England. So I set my sights on going to England to study.
And you eventually did.
Yeah.
Studied there.
3 years later, yeah.
And you would go on and you play, I mean, you've played all the major roles, and I want to talk about them in a little bit. Hamlet and Lear, and now Falstaff,
right.
Henry. I mean, you played all of these major roles. What I learned from the book is you were not adverse to studying and watching and listening to other actors who had done these roles. Doesn't that inhibit your performance or lock you into playing their performance?
No, I think in some ways it allows you to prevent some of the things that they do. And in the case of Orson Welles, for example, playing Falstaff.
Chimes of Midnight.
Exactly. I saw that before I played Falstaff the first time in 1968. I mean, and I learned so much from just watching him, and the thing I learned that was fundamental was that he was playing himself. He wasn't putting on a caricature. He was playing from the gut. He was playing, and it was real. I was expecting to see sort of this buffoon, cartoon, And I think a lot of people to this day, when they come and they hear about Falstaff, they think that that's what they're going to see.
Right.
When they don't see that, sometimes. I mean, some critics were very disappointed at the end. They thought I was too understated.
Yeah. No, I would disagree with them violently. I've seen this production now 3 times, as Falstaff in the 2 Henry plays. You bring not only a moving pathos and a true sense, that you talked about, that Orson Welles, I think, brought. There is also this light, buoyant sweetness, and you see the desperation in this man. From early on. How much of that was part of your thinking as you went in?
Well, when I did it when I was 27, I had some insights, but that were, I think, they were generated specifically by my ability to imitate. I was doing a lot of imitation of Orson Welles. I didn't have that internal knowledge, that experience and time 46 years later.
That you can bring to it.
Exactly. So, it's like, I mean, I jokingly say, in those days I was trying to be old and fat, and today I'm trying to be young and thin, as Falstaff, But I'm very happy you point that out, because there is a desperation inside of him. He's a hedonist. He's an addict, and being an ex-addict myself, I understand that. He's addicted to those pleasurable things in life, not just food and drink, but also the experience of exchanging witticisms with people, the alacrity of thinking in the mind. And I think that's what the great thing, and the thing that continually amazes me about Shakespeare is that he was able to capture all of that in this one.
That was beautiful. It's like lights going on throughout those 2 plays. I mean, they're majestic. They're beautifully written and performed brilliantly by this cast that has worked together so often in the past.
That's true.
You and Ed Jarrow.
Yes, Ed
who
Jarrow.
does a wonderful job as the king.
Yes, he does.
He was your Gloucester when you played King Lear.
Yes.
Tell me about that production. This is one of the mammoth workouts for any actor.
Well, it isn't, but Falstaff is more difficult.
Really?
Yeah, it really is. Except the intensity of the storm sequence in Lear is physically very demanding. But beyond that, Lear gets breaks. He gets breaks. Falstaff, the long scenes, the long speeches that he has in some, areas are much more exhausting.
Really?
The Gads Hill robbery, running around.
Oh yeah,
like
running
that,
around and the dropping and the falling and then you're stabbing. I mean, it is a workout.
It is a workout. It's an athletic event.
Well, you do it well and beautifully. I might add.
Thank you.
Tell me about Hamlet. How that the Hamlet you did with Joseph Papp at the New York Shakespeare Festival is legendary, with James Earl Jones as Claudius and Colleen Dewhurst as the mother. I mean, it was an incredible. Julie Harris, was Julie Harris in your production?
No, she was in the earlier one. She was in the earlier. Yeah. Raul Julia.
Raul Julia.
Playing Osric. Charles Durning, the gravedigger. Bernard Hughes was Polonius. Sam Waterston was Laertes.
Laertes, yeah.
Tom Aldridge was the other gravedigger. I mean, it was an extraordinary. Kitty Wynn, I played Hamlet 3 times.
Right.
Starting at the Long Wharf, then do it in Central Park, and then we did it out at the Mark Taper Forum. 3 different productions. But Kitty Wynn and Linda Hunt played the player queen in all 3 of those shows.
All 3 of them?
All 3. Wow. She was the player queen.
No, they're incredible. I mean, and the pictures are, I wish I could have seen that when you look at those pictures, just incredible.
Hamlet is one of the most difficult and challenging roles, I think, in the Shakespeare canon. I think it, and I always felt like you don't really play Hamlet. Hamlet sort of plays you. And you have to get rid of all these premeditations. If you have any premeditated thinking about it, it's dangerous. Because
you find it as you go? Did you find it as you go?
The idea is to be in the moment. It's spontaneity. Whatever's happening at that, yes, you do. You find it as you go. Yeah.
Let's stop for a moment and talk about what you describe as a real turning point in your life. You are at the apex of your career. You're Mike Hammer on television. Millions of people are watching you. You're abroad doing some pickup scenes. You're shooting a film over there, and they were doing a scene. And at the airport, you're stopped, and they discover cocaine in your possession, something you'd been doing during the Hammer run.
Right.
What did that moment represent? You say that you say in the book that it saved your life.
It did. It absolutely did. I was in total self-denial. I was in a frame of mind where I thought that I can handle this. I mean, I've been reading the cocaine papers by Freud and Conan Doyle. I had all these support mechanisms to justify my addiction. And it wasn't working because I was beginning to really feel not good. I was getting nosebleeds and I was getting sick and I continued to delude myself. That's the nature of that addiction. It's a diabolical drug. Because
and then you end up in jail. You go to Reading Jail, which is where Oscar Wilde famously spent a number of years. Tell me about that period.
Well, that was the lowest point of my life, without question.
But you also say that it allowed you to deepen your faith because of the time. Tell me about that.
It absolutely did. Well, I mean, when you're brought to your knees, it's like you're helpless, and I met a priest who was the chaplain at Reading, and befriended him, and he took an interest in me, and I've often wondered if that was because of my celebrity status or it was genuine, because after I got out and we actually brought him and his wife to my parents were so grateful because I would get phone calls and I would be able to communicate through him. Oh. And he would also allow me to get cigarettes smuggled in through the church, as you know. Well, they just destroyed Reading Jail, so I can talk about it.
You can talk about it freely now. That, by the way, you also based the warden that you played in Jailbreak, the Fox show.
Prison Break.
Prison Break, sorry. On that warden.
He was a wonderful man, and still alive, Really? Warren Hayday, because he was somebody who believed in compassion and rehabilitation. He didn't believe that, he believed that people who were in, as I was, because I was a drug user, should be in a medical facility rather than prison. But I had tried to sneak the stuff in, so it was a felony, and that was.
Around this time, you've already met the woman you would marry, Malgosia, who you'd go on to have 2 beautiful children with.
Yes.
And you converted at that point.
I did.
In there.
Yeah.
Tell me why. You converted to the Catholic Church.
Well, you know, I was raised as an Episcopalian.
Yeah.
And during the time, you know, in the Nicene Creed, there's that one phrase, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. Well, I took that literally. I didn't, you know, I didn't think it was the generic, I mean, I took it literally.
You took it as, of course, I just follow what they do.
I'm just, you know, so I'm just a sort of I'm an almost Catholic. You know, as an Episcopalian, which is true in a sense, because it's the Church of England.
Very close,
yeah,
very close. And you met Saint Pope John Paul the Great through your wife and her Polish connections, I noticed.
That's right, exactly.
What was that like?
We were in the Cannes Film Festival, and she said, we should go, maybe we should go to Rome and have our son blessed by the Pope. I said, well, sure. She said, I'm going to call the Vatican. I thought, oh, come on, this is, you're great. But she's Polish, and she went to the same school that Pope John had gone to, the same, you know, they went to the same school.
In Krakow?
In Warsaw.
Warsaw, okay.
Yeah, outside of Warsaw. And where he had studied there. And she got a hold of somebody who was Polish at the Vatican and made this appointment.
Oh,
and then it was for a Tuesday, and then I remember there was something that came up, we had to change it. She says, I will ask you, she said, can you change the appointment from Tuesday to Wednesday? I mean, just...
And they did it?
They did it. I couldn't believe it. Well, that's the solidarity with Polish people.
Yeah. And what was it like? What did you think?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, he was an extraordinary man.
Yeah, no, he was...
What energy. I mean, he just glowed, he radiated. He was extraordinary. And I thought, well, that has a lot to do with the fact that he was an ex-actor.
That's true.
You know,
no, he had that
poet.
magnetism.
He had a fantastic presence.
It was incredible.
Amazing.
Let's talk about your audio career as a voiceover artist.
Right.
You've done Nova on PBS for a decade. American Greed on CNBC, which goes on all the time.
Yeah.
The National Geographic, the Truth and Life audio Bible that Carla Mari and myself produced, and you were such a part of. The Word of Promise before that.
Right.
What drives you to want to spend so much of your time on that very difficult, when denied the visible, it's a very difficult art, and people don't realize that.
Again, it comes back to that time when I was down there at the NBC studios with my dad. It's the fact that the voice, the inflection of the voice, can create a whole world of feeling and, you know, and implication, and it's suggestion. It's about observation and listening to others and around you, and what I teach my students is that observe something and then try to imitate it. Do it yourself. Do it. When you hear something on the radio, whatever it is, you know, imitate it.
Pick it up and try to imitate it.
Try to do it. Try to do it, and that will allow you to expand your vocabulary, your emotional vocabulary, in terms of how to. What inflection to use, whether it's the intensity to use, you know, how to work in front of a microphone.
Yeah, and it's an art.
It is.
An art. I was just with my friend Jim Caviezel, and he said he was so amazed watching you, and he learned so much watching you in the booth because of the intensity and the way you would draw meaning and inflection out that was lost on so many other actors.
I've had the great benefit of working with some wonderful directors in radio. The English, Martin Jarvis and Martin Jenkins and Roz Ayers, and I still work very actively with LA Theater Works, where we do radio plays in front of a live audience, but they're for radio, they're for CD.
And you record them,
And it's a great experience, and I've been doing that for a long time, and we just did Uncle Vanya not too long ago. And one of the things that they teach or have taught me is that what you're doing is you're making a movie of the mind. And you're doing it with your voice. So it's like you still have all of the same instincts that propel your work and motor your work as an actor. You translate, you know, in the voice. And generally, I find myself really just performing in front of a microphone the same way I would if it was working in front of a camera.
Wow. Tell me what you learned from playing St. John in when you played the Apostle John in The Truth and Life. Did you come away with anything you didn't expect going in?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I mean, I was unaware of the closeness of John to Jesus. in terms of the fact that he was his best friend.
Yeah.
He was his closest friend. And for that same man to write Revelations.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean...
And it's a very different text.
Totally.
How did you deal with that? How did you approach
Well,
Revelations?
I was very overwhelmed by it at first, because I felt they're almost two different people. I mean, it was hard to reconcile John's loving nature and his gentleness with the brutality and the violence of Revelations. But it's the Bible.
Yeah,
and,
it's there.
So it's there.
Yeah, well, that was after. I think that's after they dipped him in the oil. And, you know, he went through a lot of suffering, but he was the only one who didn't die. But I guess he was. They say history, the tradition tells us he was certainly roughed up by that time. But what a vision! What a piece of just text.
Extraordinary.
It's amazing.
Well, the book itself. I mean, you know, and having also done Paul and Job.
Right.
I think Paul is probably one of the most fascinating characters in the Bible, I think, and very contradictory. I mean, you know, I mean, in terms of being able to define what is the law, what is the law. I mean, in those days, of course, Moses had a lot to say.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
and
that mind, you feel that mind and how vibrant it is as he moves through it. It's just amazing. And if people haven't heard it, they should get it, because I think these are definitive readings of these roles. I mean, it's just incredible. But I could say that about just anything you do.
Oh, no.
Tell me your favorite Shakespeare. If you had to give me a little quatraint of Shakespeare for our audience, what would it be?
What is honor? I mean, it's in my mind right now. I keep working on that. So the other night I came up with something. I mean, because Falstaff has the advantage of being able to address the audience directly in his soliloquies. He talks to them. So I really went, I said, well, what is honor? And I was looking for people, you know, it's like, you have an idea? Yeah. Oh, it's a word. What's in that word? So
you're playing off of their
with Shakespeare's text, and it worked like gangbusters. I was nervous about it at first. I thought, oh, I don't know if I want to do it like that.
This is during the war scene, and he's trying to figure out where does honor lie in all of this.
Yeah,
it's a great moment.
And what a speech! I mean, I'm just I'm blown away every time I hear so much of this poetry, not just Falstaff's, but I mean, Hal and Hotspur and the King. I mean, they were just Lady Percy, wonderful characters, you know, and the poetry is just extraordinary.
No, my favorite part is in that. I think it's in part 1, Prince Hal's monologue when he looks at you all and he says I know you all and will a while uphold the unyoked humor of your idleness. Yeah. Oh, what a great moment! I love that. That bespeaks the genius of Shakespeare, the political turning he makes there.
That's
when this loose behavior I throw off and pay the debt I never promised it. Oh
yeah, you got it, you know it.
Well, one day we'll do it together.
Did you ever play it?
Long time ago.
Good for you.
Long time ago. Yeah, well, I had a little more, you know, on the crown than just the gold stuff. But
so did we.
Those days have passed. What's next for you? I know you also compose music.
Yes.
The Mike Hammer radio dramas you've done with Carla Mari, and I've seen your things on iTunes.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm in the midst of doing more of that. Yeah, I love it. I played most of my life, and now I'm doing a lot more movie music, which is what I like to do.
I love it.
Showbiz kind of stuff. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, to see you on stage, to listen to you, and to watch you on film is always such a joy. Stacey Keach, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's a joy. All in all, an actor's life on and off the stage, Stacey Keach's terrific memoir is available at bookstores everywhere and online. If you're in D.C., don't miss Stacey in the Shakespeare Theatre Company's Henry IV Parts 1 and 2. It runs through June 8th. And the Truth and Life Audio Bible is available through the EWTN Religious Catalog and online at downloadjesus.com. Up next, the Pope is headed to the Holy Land to meet with the Orthodox Patriarch of Constantinople and to promote unity. What will he face when he lands? Author and Holy Land expert Stephen Ray will preview the trip when the World Over Live continues, and Cardinal Tagle is straight ahead. Don't touch that remote.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. Pope Francis arrives in the Holy Land where Christ was born this weekend, a land with a dwindling Christian presence. Only 2% of the population is Christian due to economic hardship, violence, and religious intolerance. What will Francis's message be? And what's the significance of the places the Holy Father visits during his pilgrimage? To put it all in perspective, I'm joined by author and host of the Footprints of God Pilgrimage series, Stephen Ray. Stephen, thanks for being here. And out of your Jerusalem Jones outfit.
This is the first time in a decade I've worn this. I did it just for you.
Well, I'm glad.
No hat or anything.
You clean up very well. Why do you think the Holy Father is not visiting Galilee, that region in northern Israel where the Christian and Catholic population resides?
Probably the largest Catholic population in the Holy Land lives in Nazareth, over 7,000. Why? It's a mystery. I don't know. Limitation of time? Logistics. I remember last time when Pope Benedict was there, they had to close the city down for 4 days.
Wow. Yeah, but both Benedict and John Paul visited there.
They did. So it's really, nobody really knows. I have not been able to find an answer to that.
Yeah, well, it's a 3-day visit, so it's
very short.
Now, there are increased tensions, and we're seeing them bubble up again between the Palestinians and the Israelis. There is great hope that somehow Pope Francis can break this, this tension. The United States tried to broker a peace agreement, didn't turn out so well. Your thoughts on what we can expect from the Pope?
I think there's a difference between optimism and hope. I have a lot of hope because God exists. I don't have a lot of optimism because I spend a lot of time there and I know the situation. But I think that the people are excited. I talked to the Bishop of Jerusalem this morning, and he said the Christians are excited, they're enthusiastic. This is their leader, the father of the Catholic Church. He's coming there, and that 2% gets a voice. They get the spotlight for a few days. And I think that he's coming there to bring them hope, to get them to stay in that land, to be the lights of Jesus there in that land.
The Pope will be seeing some of the highlights of the tours that you no doubt you've taken over the years. He'll be seeing many of these holy sites, and those of you joining us through EWTN through the live coverage will have a front row seat on all of this. He's going to the Cenacle. I want to share with you a little footage. This is from today. There is an ultra-Orthodox group of Jews, according to the Associated Press, protesting the Pope's presence here and his coming to the Cenacle. Now, the Cenacle is the site of the Last Supper. It is also a memorial to whom?
Right underneath is the tomb of David. Not really, but it's where the Jews come to celebrate.
It's a memorial. He's not buried.
He was buried on the other side of Mount Zion and Silwan. But anyway, this is where they have a tomb. They come there, their prayer books, and it's quite amazing to see, to visit. We visited. But so you have the tomb of David underneath, and right above it is the upper room where 4 sacraments, 3 for sure, maybe even 4 sacraments were instituted.
Yeah, coming to the Holy Spirit, the Last Supper.
Priesthood. And if you want, the Holy Spirit came, so that's confirmation, Eucharist, priesthood, and confession. This is where he said, he breathed on him and said, those who sins you forgive.
Tell me about the significance of the Pope going to the Holy Sepulchre, the site not only of the crucifixion of Jesus, you have Golgotha there, but within the same facility, you have the site of the resurrection. Meeting the ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew there, embracing. What is the significance of doing it at that particular spot?
Boy, that's, you know, here you've got 2 brothers. They're going to hug. They're going to pray together. What do I mean by that? Well, from Constantinople comes Andrew. From Rome comes Peter. Those 2 brothers are going to meet together, and it's very symbolic for Christianity, the 2 lungs of the church, as we've taught. And the 2 of them, if they hug and they pray together and they visit that tomb where Jesus was crucified and buried and rose from the dead, that church, that's very significant. That hug of those 2 brothers will be plastered on everything. It's going to be a beautiful thing, but it also has theological importance.
And following this hug, this moment of unity, there is, for the first time, this never happens. You have the 3 custodies, and we should explain there are 3 groups that have custody over the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Break those down for us and why this is so extraordinary. I mean, these people have thrown punches at each other
at times, and I've seen this happen. There's 6 traditions that have real estate in that church, but the big ones there, of course, are the Roman Catholics, called the Latin Rite, the Greek Orthodox, and the Armenians. And those are the ones that have the biggest real estate. And for those 3 all to be there together, together is it's a very symbolic thing, and I hope that the camaraderie or what is symbolized by that carries on into the weeks ahead.
Yeah, no, that's going to be quite a moment, and you'll see it all as it happens.
Yep.
Now, there's something extraordinary happening. Pope Francis has appointed, as part of his delegation, his friend, a Jewish rabbi from Argentina, as well as a sheik from Buenos Aires.
Yes.
They are traveling as part of the official papal delegation. It has never happened before.
No, it's right. It's quite unique, and it's making a huge statement. If I can get along with these three, if us three can get along in this smaller scenario, then all of you can too. We're setting kind of the prototype for what we want to see happen here. And I think that both the Muslims and the Jews are both seeing this as a very positive development, and they like Pope Francis. He's unpredictable. He's likable. He's spontaneous. And he's also had a whole history of being open to dialogue with these different groups. So I think everybody is very excited about it.
No, this is an exciting and interesting trip because even Constantinople, Bartholomew's official delegation, has a Catholic priest. I know a priest who's part of that delegation, and he was brought in by a Greek family. So it's very interesting how there's an ecumenical flavor and an interreligious flavor in the delegations even.
And Bishop Schomele, he's a good friend of mine. He's the auxiliary bishop of Jerusalem. I just talked to him this morning, and he said that and he's the one setting all of these meetings up, that one of the main emphases of the Pope on this whole trip is the ecumenical dialogue between these Christian traditions.
Right.
There's the bigger
Orthodox and the Catholics.
There's the bigger tradition with the Jews and the Muslims too. But the big issue that the Pope is really focusing on, he said, was this between the East and the West Church.
Yeah, he's meeting at the end of the trip with Muslims independently and the two rabbis of Jerusalem independently. No joint group, which happened in the last few visits. Tell us for a moment, he goes to Jordan when he first arrives, and there is a much disputed, a hotly disputed baptismal site in the Jordan River. Now, the Israelis have always maintained they have the official site, and it's on their side of the border. Now Jordan is saying, no, 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 no. This is the baptismal site. That's the one the Pope is visiting at the Jordan beyond the Bethany.
I have to side.
Bethany beyond the Jordan.
Bethany beyond the Jordan. I have to side with Jordan on this one. I was there 10 years ago when they were digging up the churches, and there are over 10, maybe 11 to 14 churches, the foundations along that little stretch of river on the Jordan side, because the first Judeo-Christians, they knew where Jesus was baptized, and they built churches to commemorate it. And I think that's, I know the archaeologist there, Wahib, and he took me on a tour and showed me this. I'm convinced that when it says that John was on Bethany beyond the Jordan, he was on the other side. Jesus came the next day to be baptized. I think it's pretty clear. When I take groups, we go on the Israel side.
And this river isn't like the Mississippi. No. This is a tiny little stream of a river.
I jokingly say to our group, here's the Mississippi of Israel. And it's, I mean, if you dove in, 2 strokes would get you on the other side, and the Jordanian police would send you back across.
Oh,
interesting. It's that close. One stone thrown at you could hit somebody on the other side.
Now, you're going to go back to the Holy Land on June 1st. In the wake of this visit, will anything have changed?
I said there's a difference between hope and optimism. I have great hope that the Lord will do something. My guess, though, because I was there after John Paul II, I was there after Benedict, and all the hype and then the hope. But my guess is that when I go back there, I don't think a lot will be different. I'm sorry to say that, because now, I wish there was, but I don't.
Before we let you go, and I have to go to this interview with Cardinal Tagle in a moment, today is a very important day for you personally. This is the 20th anniversary of your entering the Catholic Church.
That's right. I've been in tears most of the day today, because I used to be an evangelical Baptist, and I was against the Catholic Church. I used to teach classes on how to convert Catholics. And now here I am celebrating today with my family, 20 years.
And what made you swim across the Tiber?
I realized the problems within Protestantism. Yeah, my book, Crossing the Tiber. But I realized the problems within Protestantism before I ever saw anything good about the Catholic Church. I say that sometimes you have to realize you're sick before you see a doctor. I realized my tradition was sick and it could never be corrected. 40,000 or so different denominations. Catholicism loomed large and beautiful.
We have 30 seconds. What are you most looking forward to about this trip to the Holy Land? What will you be watching most intently?
Well, I have a lot of friends. I'm going to meet with the Bishop of Jerusalem right away and see if his aspirations and hopes had come true. We're also filming the life of Abraham, which we'll be showing on EWTN probably starting next year, so we're going to be doing that. I'm going to be curious to see what all my friends, both Muslims and Christians and Jews, think.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking. I think that visit to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, that is the apex of this visit.
I can't wait to hear
people shouldn't miss. Be sure to catch EWTN's live coverage of Pope Francis in the Holy Land beginning this Saturday, May 24th through Monday, May 26th. Go to EWTN.com for all the air times and the schedules in your area. You can also find all of Stephen Ray's books and the Footprints of God videos at EWTN's religious catalog. You can find out more about his Holy Land pilgrimage at his website, footprintsofgod.com. Thank you, Stephen, for being here.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Moving right along, my next guest leads one of the fastest-growing Catholic populations in the world. He's the Archbishop of Manila, and at 56, one of the youngest cardinals in the Church. He was just appointed by Pope Francis as one of the 3 presidents of the upcoming Extraordinary Synod of Bishops for the family in October. Now, I sat down with him recently at Catholic University of America, and he spoke candidly about the focus of that synod, and he reacts to the Boston Globe report that he was, quote, open to considering the arguments for allowing Catholics who divorce and remarry without an annulment a declaration from a church court that the first marriage was invalid to receive communion and the other sacraments, end quote. Here's my exclusive interview with Cardinal Luis Tagle. I want to talk about some of the difficulties and challenges we're facing, not only in your local church, but universal. There was a reproductive health law that you fought vigorously against, I know, because what it requires is the government to provide contraceptives all over the country. You opposed it. It's now on hold, I believe, but it has passed. It has passed. There were a few of your confreres, bishops, who wished or threatened to excommunicate some of the politicians involved and even the president. You did not agree with that. Why not?
Well, first of all, I am very cautious about the language of excommunication, because the church is primarily a sacrament of salvation and not of damnation. So I believe excommunication happens in very strict circumstances, and you have to judge levels of culpability on a personal level. So but you know, in fact, when that was clarified, the bishops who were alleged to have been part of that pronouncement, they were surprised, because they said that in their interviews they did not threaten anyone. You know, they were asked. Some of them were asked, "Isn't abortion a cause or a reason for excommunication?" And they explained how some contraceptives are abortifacients. You know? So it's in that context. So it's not a blanket, threat to supporters of the law.
Now, Pope Francis recently appointed you as one of the co-presidents of this upcoming synod, a very important synod on the family, taking place in Rome this fall, and it'll continue into the next year.
This next year.
You have been quoted in interviews, most recently in the Boston Globe, as saying you are open to hearing arguments as to whether Catholics can be divorced and remarried without annulments. Why?
I was quoted as saying
John Allen quotes you as saying that you were open to arguments where a Catholic might be married, divorced and remarried without an annulment. Are you?
Oh, I don't recall. I don't recall the conversation focusing on that. No, what I recall of the conversation is this: that when we had this that conversation, we just came from the consistory where Cardinal Casper gave a whole presentation, and the discussion that ensued, opened for me personally a whole range of a whole range of concerns and issues that I was ignorant of. So I said, wow, there's so much to learn, especially now that I'm a president-delegate.
Yes.
No, so I am open to all the perspectives that could help us shed light on the issue.
Do you think, with your study and your understanding of theology, certainly far surpassing mine, is it possible to envision a policy that would allow Catholics to divorce and remarry without an annulment, given the church teaching and Christ's teaching on the indissolubility of marriage? Is it possible?
I just came from a meeting of the preparatory committee for the synod. The following things are very clear. The teaching of Jesus and the teaching of the church will not be changed. No. What people are looking at right now, especially the canonists, is this. No. How could canon law and its procedures, reflect more clearly, the teaching of Jesus Christ, and the teaching of the church? Because some people are claiming that the canonical procedures are too rigid, and also some are even asking, the canonical prescriptions, are they clear about the doctrinal basis? Or is the legal canonical path taking its own way quite separately from the doctrinal dimension? The other thing is, it also became quite clear that every, let's call it, failed marriage is quite unique. It's difficult to say all, marriages that ended up in divorce, because when you deal with cases and you deal with persons, individuals' lives, then you have to.
But that's the annulment process, correct? I mean, that's why you have the annulment process.
Yes,
so is that what the focus of this is? Reforming the annulment process?
That has become a big way. So doctrinally, how can you change the word of the Bible or the words of Jesus?
But Cardinal Casper seems to be suggesting something akin to that, though, in that presentation, which I know was hostilely received by a lot of the cardinals present.
But he responded to that.
Yes.
He said he was talking there as a theologian who did a lot of historical. In fact, in the meeting yesterday, there was another perspective that came up. The canonical tradition of the Eastern Rite churches.
Right.
How they handle so-called divorces and second marriages. But of course, the synod will not focus only on this situation.
Well, we see the media coverage of this seems to focus on...
for example, in the Philippines, we don't have divorce.
Right.
So if the whole synod is about divorce and
you need to get off the President's Council.
Maybe just call a synod for countries with divorce. But we have families where the couples are separated, not because they don't want to live with one another, but they're de facto separated by poverty, by migration. It's not anger towards one another that made them decide to separate, but it is the love for each other and for the children. That's a totally different situation.
Are you concerned that a combination of certain individuals and the media are hijacking this synod and changing it into something it was never envisioned to be?
That's always a danger, because people have their own interests and they have their own agenda, so they express in their form of reporting some sort of a support for their agenda. But I sit on the preparatory committee of the synod, and I tell you, the communion of the divorced remarried is just one item among many items. There are at least 8 major topics, and that is just one. And they always say this is a North Atlantic
exactly
North Atlantic concern. When you go to Africa, when you go to Asia, and for us, for example, because of migration, the fabric of the family is really tested. And so we are asking for serious pastoral care for migrants so that they could remain faithful to their spouses left at home or to their children.
I want to wrap up here. Yeah. So many people during the last conclave stopped me on the street, especially one young man whom you met in passing. You may not even remember this. He felt he had a calling to the priesthood. He asked, I think, to come speak with you for a moment. You were crossing the piazza, and you sat with him and spoke to him for 20 minutes or so. And he enthusiastically told me about this moment, this encounter with you. Really? And he said he felt it was decisive in his considering this vocation seriously, and almost a message for him personally. Yeah. How aware are you of those moments? And do you go out of your way to make time for people you encounter? I'm sure you were on your way to something else at that time.
Yeah, I usually try to stop when people want to ask questions, and if the questions are really essential or important, then I give them time.
People say you are the Asian Pope Francis.
Oh my! Pope Francis is Pope Francis.
How do you react to that?
I smile. I don't take it seriously. I mean, I know Pope Francis. We worked together for 3 years in the Council of the Synod. He is his person. I am not him. But if there are. I worked longer with Cardinal Ratzinger, and so.
Well, I think what they're talking about is your way of life. You lead a simple way of life. You are mingling with the public. You're available to people. One can look at your face and see the joy of your faith. I think that's what they're saying.
Yeah, maybe that. Well, if it is that, then I'm happy.
Well, good. Well, we're happy too. Your Eminence, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you.
Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. The links are on my website. I'll bring you the latest news and commentary and some fun throughout the week. I also post the entire show there. And if you sign up for my free e-blast, I'll send you all kinds of exclusives. Go to the center of the web page, RaymondArroyo.com, to sign up for the e-blast. Join us next week when my guest will be mega best-selling author James Patterson. It's quite an interview. And happy Memorial Day to everyone out there. It's an important time to remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. Our affection and our prayers go out to all the families there. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C., and we'll see you next time. Bye now.